Okay, hello everybody. We are back in the office for this version of the TOBI lab exercise homework videos, or homework review videos, I guess you could say. And we're going to do the same thing we did last time. I've just randomly selected transcriptions from all of you for each of the 5 different tokens or sound files that I asked you to transcribe last time. And we'll just walk through them and see what's good, what's not so good about each one of these transcriptions. I think the first thing I'm going to do, not having changed this since last time, is to amend or reduce the pitch settings a bit. So this is the first token we listened to.
And I gave Manny a mango.
And the reason I need to kind of lower the upper end of this pitch range is because it's me speaking, as you may have noticed. And this is the candidate transcription we've got.
And I gave Manny a mango.
Okay, so this person is kind of moving forward a little bit with the sort of elements in their TOBI transcription because they've included what is called a phrase accent here, which we haven't really covered, technically speaking, in the lectures yet, if you've been following according to the schedule in the syllabus. But that's okay because we're going to get to these eventually. We're going to get to them next time, actually. So that's no biggie, but if you didn't include anything that looks like this little L dash sign, that's fine. Overall, I'd say this final boundary tone transcription is correct because...
And I gave Manny a mango.
The F0 kind of drops off to the low end of the speaker's range at the tail end of the utterance, so I'm totally fine with that. One thing this person added, though, right before this boundary tone transcription is this 3 break, which makes a lot of intuitive sense because you could think, well, this 3 break kind of lines up with this phrase accent. We'll talk about this next time, and therefore you should transcribe that as well. But that's not how the system actually works. For whatever weird reason. So if you have, we'll talk about this next time again, but if you have a phrase accent followed by a boundary tone, you just have a 4 break that's associated with that end of the utterance, basically, or end of the intonational phrase. So there's an end of an intermediate phrase here, but we don't put it on the breaks tier. So I'm going to remove that. And just to keep things simple, for those of you who haven't looked at that part of the system, I'm going to eliminate that as well and say it was fine the way it was, but we'll just make it simpler for everybody else.
And I gave Manny a mango.
And then think about the rest of these. And basically, I think I'm okay with all the rest of this.
And I gave Manny a mango.
I think the way I transcribed this guy in the middle here. So number one, there is a low star on Anna. You hear me kind of dip down. You can see it as well.
And I gave Manny a mango.
And I think you can definitely hear the H star on mango. This person put it right at the boundary between the M and the A, which I guess is okay. That's in the middle of that syllable. The peak is a little bit before that. Maybe it's even in the part right before a mango.
And I gave Manny a mango.
But be that as it may, this is fine. This one's a little less distinct because F0 just kind of rises on through it. You may hear that Manny is sort of prominent or accented in some way.
And I gave Manny a mango.
Maybe.
And I gave Manny a mango.
So I think what I did in my transcription when I was giving you feedback is I put a question mark there, and somebody wrote me an email to say, like, what's up with that? I don't remember that from the system. And it's kind of not really officially a part of the system because what it means is I don't know what's going on here exactly, and let's talk about it further. So it's not like an official answer or official element in the system. It just, maybe there's a pitch accent here, maybe not.
Manny, and I gave Manny a mango.
And one of the reasons I like to do this in class is because it kind of replicates the approach that people normally take when they do this for research purposes or to create some sort of database of like pitch accent transcriptions, is that, they'd flag things like, is there a pitch accent on mango? Is it an accented element of this utterance or not?
Manny.
And then we can talk about it. Often you might do it like in groups of 3, and if you come up with like a sort of majority rules system, like you can talk about it, and like if 2 people think there is a pitch accent there and 1 doesn't, then you like include it in the final result. But you try to talk it out and come to a consensus. That's all that question mark means, though, is that maybe, I'm not entirely sure, there is actually a pitch accent there. So if you see that again, that's all it represents. I guess I'll leave it out for now and just go with this.
And I gave Manny a mango.
And say, good job, random transcriber number 1. Let's move on to random transcriber number 2. Another sentence or utterance about Manny.
Manny came with Anna.
And Anna. Okay, so what's going on with this one?
Manny came with Anna.
First of all, maybe we can clean up what's going on here at the tail end. So remember that the boundary tone and this 4 break should line up. That's just a little housekeeping detail. And we can put a break there at the end of the word Anna as well.
Anna.
And I'm sorry, I'm getting that echo. I just can't stop it. Yeah, so, right. That is a low boundary tone there as well. You can kind of see the creak here in my voice at the tail end. If it doesn't echo. I don't think that's echoing. That's good.
Manny came with Anna.
Yeah, whatever. The rest of this is kind of interesting. And like usually, I would say do the words tier first, and then once you get the boundaries between the individual words, you can easily line those up with what appears down here on the breaks tier. But if you don't do that at the same time, then it gets a little messy and it can get hard to line these up exactly. I'll try that real quickly here. One thing is with the 0 break.
Manny came with Anna.
That's what you would transcribe on the breaks tier if you don't, or not. It's not if you don't hear a break between words, because words are always going to be right up next against each other in the actual acoustic record of speech. But what a 0 is for is when you get some sort of clear, like, segmental articulatory change across word boundaries. So like, a phrase like did you, the D at the end of did, it becomes more palatalized, it becomes an affricate right before the ya. There's sort of, basically assimilation happening across the word boundary there. So it kind of winds up being sort of like a unitary whole, just 2 words combined into something larger. And that's sort of why you'd have a 0 break between did and you and did you. With came with, maybe this person wasn't hearing the M prominently or something like that.
Manny came with Anna.
And M is bilabial and wa has a labial element too. But there is an M there. You can hear it pretty clearly.
Came.
It just might go by pretty quickly, and this is the with.
With.
So both the M and the W are doing their thing there, as you'd expect them to. So this should really be a 1 break, but it's good to keep that in mind. We will encounter 0 breaks as we go. I might actually put this a little bit over here. You can kind of see a nice little glottal stop at the beginning of that Anna a little bit.
Anna.
I kind of attack it. Yeah, so I'll change that.
Manny came with Anna.
A couple other things. Yeah, there is a H star in Manny.
Manny.
I'm trying to kind of highlight that as I speak.
Manny came with Anna.
And so, but the thing with this is that the pitch accent is going to be on the stressed syllable of the word. So I think this person put it at the F0 peak, which is not an unreasonable thing to do, but it should be on the stressed syllable, which is the first syllable of Manny. If you want to kind of denote, well, this pitch accent is not really lining up with the pitch peak, you can do something like that and say, well, this pitch peak kind of belongs to this pitch accent that comes before it. That's a viable way to transcribe these utterances. Mostly, though, I want you to just focus on the fact that this is according to the theory and the grammatical rules of the system. Mostly, if there's a pitch accent, it has to align with a stressed syllable in the utterance. And I think this person was kind of following the pitch contour more than anything else, because I see an L star here. I said this in the previous video, but you normally aren't going to get accents on function words like with.
Manny came with Anna.
It kind of just goes by really quickly, right? With
Manny came with Anna.
You don't hear that as jumping out at you in any obvious way, but there is a kind of low F0 contour here. So if you're just trying to like denote where are the peaks and the troughs of the pitch contour, you might put an L star here, but it's not accented. It's not jumping out as prominent for any reason. And similarly, they seem to have put an H star in this other final rise in F0 at the tail end. There is a, it does sound like there's a pitch accent on Anna to me.
Anna. Manny came with Anna.
I'm kind of emphasizing that as well, making it more prominent, but the F0 is lower, obviously, than the initial F0s. This one's at 140 hertz, and this one's at 165. So yeah, we have 2 different high stars in this utterance, but the second one is lower in F0, so we denote it as a downstepped high star. So it's got that little exclamation mark right in front of it. And yeah, this is just barely in the first syllable here. I might move it more central to a more central location in Anna.
Anna.
Like that. So
Manny
kind of corresponds to what we see in Manny.
Anna. Manny.
And that's all I'd say about this one. Good job with this one, but remember, you got to be listening with your ears more than you're just looking at the pitch contour to be able to do these transcriptions. You can perceive what's accented or not if you close your eyes, but the pitch accent contour, the F0 contour, it helps you out a little bit in determining exactly where things are headed. Or it helps you quantify exactly what the speaker did with their vocal folds while they were speaking. We'll see more of that, though, as we go along. Here's number 3.
Who was it? Melanie?
This is me, and I can hear that I'm like speaking in a room with a little bit of an echo in it. You can actually kind of see the echo here. Yeah, we'll just ignore that for now.
Who was it? Melanie?
So there's a couple things in here that I like. First of all, this final boundary tone is good. It should be lined up with that 4 break.
Melanie?
And I think we can see this is pretty obviously that sort of like typical yes/no question contour that we get in English. So there's a low star in Melanie. It should be on the first. We should hear it basically as part of the first syllable in Melanie, the stressed syllable in Melanie.
Melanie?
So Melanie kind of bounces on that first syllable and then it goes straight up. So yeah, we got a low star followed by a high boundary tone. There's a little something more going on at the start here, though.
Who was it? Who was it?
There's a big breaker in the middle, right?
Who was it? Melanie?
So there's a couple things you can do here. Number 1, I'd get rid of this number 1. I'd move this over here like that. And what I'm going to do is something a little funny, which I haven't really shown you in the lecture yet, I don't think. I'm just going to say, well, this is like a silent gap down here. It's fairly long. I don't know. It's a half a second, 350 milliseconds, so about a third of a second. So this is just silence, right? Maybe it's an echo a little bit, but that doesn't count because I'm not speaking.
Melanie?
And so what goes on here, there's a clear break at the end of this first question.
Who was it? Melanie? Who was it? Melanie?
Like that could be an utterance unto itself, right?
Who was it?
Who was it?
Who was it? And
then he's guessing like Melanie, and that he being me. That's my pronoun, I guess. Anyways, this is a 4 break. So there's like a complete cessation of speaking at that point. You're done with this utterance.
Who was it?
So that's a complete stop. It's a 4. And we need a boundary tone with that as well. It's going to be actually a little bit different from what we see from the yes-no question contour because this part of this is right. Oops, this person didn't get the who. Just notice that. The who. Not the rock band, but the word.
What?
Yeah, so this is kind of the typical pattern we see for WH questions. It looks more like you would see, like what you would see for a statement where there's like a high star pitch accent followed by a low boundary tone of some sort. So we get the sort of prominence here.
Who was it? Who was it?
So hopefully in this 3-word utterance or 3-word phrase, you can hear the was is sort of jumping out as more prominent than the rest of it.
Who was it? Who was it?
And it's because the F0 goes so high for that pitch accent for was. And then it goes way down immediately for it, down to the creaky end of my range there. So I've got a low boundary tone here. The break here between these 2 words is more here. And there's no co-articulation happening across this word boundary. It's clearly a voiced z followed by an I. So
who was it?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they were hearing with the 0. I do have some people every year who kind of transcribe a 0 here for this gap between the who and the was. And this person didn't seem to transcribe that to begin with, so maybe they didn't hear it at all. I don't know.
Who was it? Who was it?
And this is a little bit funny because the oo for who is basically in the exact same articulatory place as the wa for the was. The labial velar glide at the beginning of was. So yeah, it would be hard to tell if there was co-articulation across that boundary anyways, because they're basically doing the same thing. So I just leave that as a 1. We'll see some 0s as we go, but try not to get over enthusiastic about them.
Who was it?
And I'd leave this whole thing as transcribed like the way you see it is here.
Who was it? Melanie?
And hopefully that makes sense. But the main moral of this story is you can have 2 intonational phrases within the same utterance, right? So we have 2/4 breaks in this whole thing. All right, so let's listen to some speakers who are not me, because you're probably sick of listening to me anyways. And we'll see what this guy has to say.
A really rewarding day.
Okay, so this transcriber picked up on a couple things that I hope they would. There's a little funkiness here in the middle. I think my guess is, so there's a couple like breaks here in the words tier right next to each other. I think they're trying to kind of set off this little gap of silence, which is the D at the beginning of day. But we'll remove this one because it's overkill. There's not like a word there. An individual stop is not a word by itself, at least not in this language. Let's line these guys up at the end. This is housekeeping, but it's going to make the whole thing look a lot nicer and professional. And then we can kind of talk about this. So this person has a downstepped high boundary tone at the end of this one.
A really rewarding day.
And a high pitch accent in really.
A really rewarding day.
And I think this high star on really is obviously right. I might move it a little bit more to the middle of the syllable. So this is the E or I part of really.
Real.
It depends on how you perceive that vowel. This is the L part right here. Yeah, and if you want, you can put that on the peak. You can see there's a little F0 peak, but that's where it belongs, is on that syllable.
Really. A really rewarding day.
And part of what this second exercise was about was the fact that you can have more than one pitch accent within an intonational phrase. And then when you do, what often happens is that after the first high star, you get downstepping on succeeding high stars. And I think that's what's happening here with day.
A really rewarding day.
And then maybe with rewarding as well. So
a really rewarding day. A really rewarding day.
So I would say there's probably a downstepped high on H star here. And on this last one, this is the way I transcribed it in the sort of feedback I gave you. It's all, if there's a high star on day, it's definitely got to be downstep. But can't really even see a pitch peak of any sort there. You can see the F0 bounce up a little bit for rewarding. Not so much for day, but it sounds, because it's longer and maybe a little bit louder, that he is trying to accent that particular word still.
A really rewarding day.
Yeah, that's up to you whether or not you perceive that or not. I'm going to put a question mark after it because I think it's open for discussion. But this gives us the weird spectacle of a pitch accent, which has a exclamation mark at the beginning and a question mark at the end. So, and then, we got the asterisk in the middle. So there's a lot going on there. It's not a swear word. It's just a downstep pitch accent, maybe.
A really rewarding day. A really rewarding day.
But what that means is that this last bit is definitely not right. So number one, it's not right because you can't have a downstep boundary tone. So that's right out. And maybe this person was transcribing the downstepping to sort of indicate what they were hearing and rewarding in day, which is fine. It's just the wrong place to put it. And you can also see he's going down to the low end of his pitch range here. So this is not what we saw before with like Melanie, where the F0 goes way up to the top of the speaker's range for a high boundary tone. Instead, it goes down to the bottom, and it's just going to be a low percent sign there. And in fact, I'll dig that one up again so we can compare. Right, so this is what we get we'd expect to get for a high boundary tone, is that big rise in the F0. It's harder to see what's going on here with this low boundary tone because there's this gap because of the Z and was. So that's maybe not a good comparison case, but we can sort of look, I guess, at some of these others. Yeah, like this maybe, yeah. There's a lot of creak, which confuses things. This one's a little confusing too. But this one is definitely a low boundary tone. He's going down to the end or the lower end of his pitch range.
A really rewarding day.
Last thing I'll say here is, again, I don't hear zeros here. With this, there's no co-articulation between and really. You can hear both the and the ers there.
A really.
And then also you can hear the E at the end of really.
Really.
And the R at the beginning of this.
Rewarding.
So I just leave these as ones. And I hope it didn't alarm you too much with the possibility of zeros, because a lot of people seem to be using them, but they're not here.
A really rewarding day.
We will find them, though. No zero left behind. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about this particular utterance.
A really rewarding day.
But it's there again as an example of downstepping. All right, last one is unusual, which is kind of unusual for this exercise because there's more things going on here than maybe we've talked about, but let's listen to it.
He was unusual. He was unusual.
Okay, so let's clean up some of this housekeeping stuff. So we've got the zero here. This is the easy stuff in these text grid transcriptions, is getting these things lined up. So make sure you get that. It's always nice to have the easy stuff right, and then you can worry about the more difficult stuff, which is basically the tones tier and maybe a little bit of the breaks tier. But yeah, this is, and actually I would move this over a little bit. There you can see the end of the voiced fricative there. So we've got, oh, and I would move this over here. This is the H part of he. Kind of sounds like a palatal fricative. And I would actually move this over. You can see kind of where the E goes to a wa there. This is the wa bit. All right, so we got he was unusual.
Unusual. Unusual.
All right, so what's going on here? Again, I would change this to a 1. So you can hear the E at the end of he. It sounds like an E. This sounds like a W at the beginning of was. Right, so we don't have to worry about that. We got 1, 1. We got a 4 at the end here because it's the whole intonational phrase. This person transcribed it with a high percent sign. I'll say more about that in a bit. They've got a low here and a high little peak here. I think this person is also kind of just following the pitch track a little too much. It's better to listen to it. So let's all close our eyes, class, for just a moment and listen to this guy.
He was unusual.
And when we listen to it again, let's say which one of these words, or if there's more than one, which words jump out at us as sounding more prominent than the others.
He was unusual. He was unusual.
And I would say he kind of jumps out as like he as more prominent at the beginning, and then also unusual a little bit at the end, even then if it's a slightly different way.
He was unusual.
Right, so that you can definitely hear that sort of leaning into that second syllable of unusual as being stressed in some way. So you might hear this low star here on was, but again, it's very rare for function words to be sort of accented like that. He's just kind of going through that one, right?
He was unusual.
I would put, instead of a low star on was, don't be misled by that trough, I would put an H star on he. That's more prominent, right? He was unusual.
He was unusual.
And I'm emphasizing it more so hopefully you can hear it better, but that's what's happening here at the beginning. You just don't see that nice little rise because it's coming right at the start of the utterance. And then we got this H star, which is good. Hopefully they weren't just putting this in here because they saw a peak in F0, because it's a little more complicated than that. You can hear that stress. It's more intense. It's a little bit longer. He's leaning into that second syllable, as I said before.
He was unusual.
So it's more prominent. But it's not as high in F0, so it's downstepped, right? So the pitch peak here is about 146 hertz. Up here, we're dealing with like 184. It's much higher at the beginning of an utterance than it is towards the end. That's a typical pattern we see in intonation.
Unusual.
Okay, so what's going on at the very end, though?
He was unusual.
I think in my feedback, I gave you a low percent sign if I did it the way I wanted it to. This person transcribed it as an H percent sign. It kind of looks like it goes down and maybe up a little bit. Okay, here's the point where I just reveal that I haven't told you everything that you need to know for all the exercises you're doing, because I'm just giving it out to you piecemeal, just a little bit at a time. I think I would stick with a low, I mean, you can say this is a low boundary tone. It's kind of what it sounds like is going to be one of these, and we haven't learned what this is yet, but it's kind of like a low phrase accent followed by a bit of a high boundary tone. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there, and for that reason, I'll just leave it the way this person transcribed it and stop, even though it doesn't look exactly what I showed you before with a high boundary tone. But that's just all the reason more why we need to get into the next lecture and get a little bit of more of a sophisticated view of how to transcribe these contours at the end of utterances. I'm not going to say anything further about it now. And if you transcribe this as a low or a high, good on you. Again, the main point of these exercises is just give them a try because it takes a while to get used to the whole system. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I'll see you in a few days for TOBI Lab exercise number 3. Looking forward to it.